Welcome back. So how did the wordless prayer exercise go? That was pretty cool, wasn't it? If you didn't do it, definitely make sure you go back and try that. It's so awesome to just channel your desires and the imagery in your mind and your feelings and project that. Because if you can do that well, then it's going to be so easy to take what's already there and turn it into words, to give that stuff the label that it needs. So far, we have talked about how to still the mind, how to tune the heart, and then we talked about how to bring those two things together, how to get them to oneness so that you can really project your intentions, ask for what you want with a lot of power behind it. Now, I could have said step 3 in our Quick Connect process here would be project your awareness, but instead I chose to make it feel his awareness. Because if you do that, if you're remembering that you're actually talking to another human being and you're imagining that there's someone right there in front of you, that's going to naturally focus your mind. It's easy when you're just praying and you have your eyes closed and you're sitting quietly to you drift off in your thoughts. You start going through the routine things you say. You're just speaking out of habit, going through all those vain repetitions. But if you're thinking you're talking to a person, that's going to keep you focused. You're going to be watching for active feedback. You're going to be okay, how are they reacting to what I'm saying now? You're going to be less likely to use trite cliches. You're going to actually speak from the heart. When you're doing that, when you're kind of aware of another person, you're going to be more aware of yourself. And that is going to set up the road for two-way communication. You're going to be focused properly on sending the message and receiving the message. So all of these prerequisites we've been going over are super important. You have to have these set. But this may be the video where you've been waiting for it the whole time. This may be the idea that made you think, yes, I want to watch this course. I want to learn from this. How to hear. How do I tell my own thoughts from the Spirit? How do I begin to get answers to prayers? And that's what we're going to start going over today. How you can get quiet and hear and know. So we're going to start on that by reviewing something that we already talked about a little bit. That idea of the airport terminal. It's like you're down at the baggage claim and you're watching the people come down the escalators and you don't know the difference, where did this person come from? Which flight did they get off of? Which flight did these people get off of? They're all mixed together. Your thoughts and impressions from the Spirit come in your body and they get mixed. And so you have to be discerning. You have to be able to sit quietly and observe and see what's arising in my own mind and what's coming from the Spirit. This kind of awareness requires you to be still in your mind, to be feeling what you're feeling. It requires mindfulness. You've got to be able to watch your own thoughts unfold without getting distracted. If you're doing the mindfulness meditation I've already shared with you, you're going to be in a good place. Any kind of meditation, honestly. As you work on focusing your mind and strengthening that muscle of focus and concentration, you're going to be getting better at prayer. But you have to be. You can't have powerful connection with God if you're constantly getting distracted, if you're constantly looking for squirrels. You have to hold your mind steady on one thing. That will begin to unlock powerful prayer for you. When you can hold your mind steady like that, it's going to give you a sense of confidence. Because you're going to be able to hear him much more clearly because you just know everything's quiet, I'm watching what I'm doing. And then when the impressions and the thoughts arise, it's going to be much easier to go, oh, hey, that felt a little bit different. But it's all about getting ourselves to where we're just more mature as people, where we can actually hold one idea in our mind and not get distracted by every little thing. God's trying to get us to grow. So he's going to expect stuff from us. He's going to expect us to be able to hold a conversation. You look at him in the eyes and talking to him without constantly getting distracted. I cannot tell you how important that principle is here. And this process of holding your mind still and getting first of all, the mind ready and the heart ready, this is what I like to call my default state. It's like the state of openness and calmness where I would like myself to default to, where it's just like my normal way of being, where I'm calm and I'm clear. And when you get to that state first, when you practice at making this state just the way you live, not frantic, not distracted by everything, but just being mindful as you go throughout your day, being aware of yourself, aware of your reactions, aware of your feelings, aware of the thoughts going through your head. That is the first stage, because you're going to just create this blank space where you can hear God. Now, if you try to connect with God powerfully and you don't get yourself into that default state, if you try to connect with God powerfully but you haven't calmed yourself first, if you haven't stilled your mind and tuned your heart in, you're just going to be frustrated. Remember, it's like you're at that party and there's music there and there's all these guests making noise and you've got to take a phone call. You have to kick the party guests out first. Clear the space, make it quiet, then you can receive. Then you can hear. I was falling asleep the other night and I had a spiritual experience. And I didn't even realize it was a spiritual experience until afterwards. But I had the thought come to my mind, I'm trying to pray right now and my head's noisy. And I had the thought, that's because you're in the outer court of your temple. You're out there where there's a bunch of people making noise. You've got to go deeper. You've got to go inside into the inner sanctum, into the Holy of Holies. And as I began to sink inside myself, going to that quiet place in the center, I could hear him. Everything quieted down. And I established a powerful connection with him. And he was showing me in that moment what he wanted me to do. He was showing me how to practice. Like, this is the state you need to be in when you really want to get close to me, when you really want to start to be face to face with the Lord. So after you've gone through these first two steps of stilling the mind, tuning the heart, you're now ready to speak and to listen. You're ready to send and to receive. And just like talking to another person in the flesh, you're going to be going through some of the same things. If you're talking to someone, if you're talking to a friend or an acquaintance or whatever, you're not just going to stand there and blah, blah, blah for like 20 minutes. You're going to talk a little bit, and you're going to be watching them, and you may notice they have something to say, and so they're going to jump in and say something back. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be this way all the time with God. You're not going to be necessarily having a lot of back and forth conversations every single time you pray. I mean, I think it can happen, but not every time. But what you want to do is not just get caught up in sending. It's so easy to get stuck in just like, blah, 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 please bless me with this, thanks for that. And then we're not paying attention to him. If our focus is all on what we're saying, we're not focusing on what it feels like to have his presence inside of us. So you're going to be listening. And when I say listening, I'm talking about feeling the peace of the Spirit inside of you. So what I do, and this has really helped me, is as I talk to him, as I'm asking for things, as I'm talking about my day, I'm watching his face. I'm trying to see how he would react to things. I'm imagining what he's probably thinking right now, what his face is doing. So if I'm talking to him and I'm feeling peace, I try to imagine that as him smiling, just like listening, like, cool, tell me more. I look for those little variations and it keeps me on my toes. It keeps me listening to the voice of the Spirit. Okay, so what is his voice like? Remember, I mentioned in a previous video that when our spirit communicates with the Spirit, it's in the abstract, as if our body wasn't there. The Holy Ghost just says something in spiritual language, our spirit picks it up in spiritual language, then it has to filter through the flesh, it has to filter into the mind, into the brain. And then that's the point where we can start to put words to it. But it just comes as these pure concepts, these pure ideas and feelings. The Holy Ghost is kind of more of a feeling than he is an actual voice in your head. And remember, there are different ways you can be communicated with. You can receive a prompting, or you just get that impulse to do something. It's like, pull over and help that person with their flat tire. Help that person put groceries in their car. It's just a feeling. It's an impulse, pure impulse. Then you have revelation, where that's more of like him giving you a specific message that may be in sentences, but not necessarily how you would expect, and we'll get to that in a second. And another way is just through strokes of pure intelligence. You just get light. You're listening to a book, and suddenly you get this packet of understanding that just kind of dawns on you all at once. It's just this flash of insight. And when the Spirit's with you, when you're getting any kind of these communications from Him, there's going to be a feeling component. And I've started to notice that there's different types. When I'm at church, the Spirit feels a certain way. It's kind of a calm, serene thing. When I go to the temple, that is thick. It's like a thick blanket of peace that's made of pure silence. I'm in there and it's like this solemn silence, almost like you are in a special place. And that peace just cuts through everything. During one really powerful experience, I felt like I was standing in the middle of the ocean that was maybe 5 feet deep. And that spread out to infinity as far as my eyes could see. And I just felt that peace calming me, holding me steady. It's not always like that. It's only been like that once. Sometimes we have that burning sensation of warmth in our chest. And that's often how it is for me now. It's not necessarily just a strong burning, but it is a light burning all through my chest. Just a warmth, a peace that's made of warmth. We could call it that. So for you, it may be different. You may notice more effects in your mind. Maybe you'll just notice everything gets clearer here. Or maybe it will be stronger emotions of peace and well-being here. But He's going to speak to you in your mind and your heart. So they're going to be both working in concert together. So be looking for that. The mind and the heart at once. That's generally how the Spirit's going to work. And what you're looking for is something that's almost on the level of instincts. You're looking for just pure sensations. Oftentimes we ask for something and we want to hear English spoken into our heads, but that's not what we get. What's generally going to happen is He's going to talk to you in the language of the Spirit. Then you get to translate it into English. You are a Spirit translator. Should put that on a business card. Spirit translator. You're going to get the ideas. You're going to get the flow of pure intelligence, just knowledge, ideas, concepts with feelings. And you're going to have to put those together into the message. We've been missing it the whole time. We don't think we get revelation because we're looking for the wrong thing. But when we remember that it'll come through very quiet concepts, ideas, and feelings at the same time, we realize, wow, we've been getting a lot of spiritual communication, way, way more than we think. And when you put it into English, it really makes it seem more real. That's been so helpful for me. As I've actually written it out, I can go back and read it and be like, oh wow, that is such a clear message to me. But if I hadn't translated it, I wouldn't have really gotten it. Now that I'm aware of that, of course, I'm much more aware. And it's so nice to know that there are these little moments throughout the week where I'll get something for me, where He'll give me a message. It may not be long, it's not going to be sentences, but sometimes there's just these little moments of connection. Now for some of you, this idea of writing it down may seem a little weird, definitely might seem a little scary. I've been in that boat. But it's important because we think in language. If you just sit and watch your brain, you'll notice you talk to yourself all day. Everything's going on in English in your brain. And so turning it into the language you speak, there's nothing wrong with that. It's totally fine. It makes sense. Because if you just get a bundle of images and feelings, there's a message there, but to make sense of it, well, you're going to have to turn it into those words. Words are just symbolic representations. When you think of the word apple, you're probably not thinking A-P-P-L-E. You're thinking round, red usually. Maybe you got the sense of the smell of the apple or the taste or just the experience of like eating an apple all at once. The idea of them growing on trees like fruit. This is good. Can't eat this. But not with those words. Just like that rush of ideas and sensations. You've taken all those things, the redness or the yellow or greenness, along with the flavor and the crunch and where they come from in the grocery store and how much they charge at the grocery store. And all those together, squished together in this concept called apple. They're all related thoughts. So by having a label for it, you can call these things together and find them. That's how language works. And so for you to be able to use words, you're taking the pure ideas and then you're giving them those labels so that they make sense in your brain. We need the language. You will get so much more, you will recognize so much more if you'll start translating those into words. Now I mentioned the spirit's going to talk to our spirit. Then that message in our spirit has to filter through our flesh. And the combination of our spirit and our brain together make up our mind. Now, the spirit and the flesh are in opposition to one another. So the spirit hears, the spirit receives and accepts. And then the body's job comes in. And the flesh likes to question and doubt. And it's always going to be this way. So when you're sitting listening for those answers, you're going to get it. And then immediately your brain's going to go, oh, what was that? Are you sure that? No, I don't know. I don't think we can believe like this. That could have been something else. That could have been, that was just us. Your brain will freak out like that. So it's not always going to be like every first thought you have is automatically revelation. Don't fall into that trap. But know that you'll get the message. Your spirit's like, cool, got it. And then your brain will start to pick it apart. The vultures of doubt will descend and just start picking that apart. And you can talk yourself out of a prompting. It's pretty easy to do. I was walking through Walmart's parking lot the other day, and I had an impulse. Help that guy with his groceries. He was driving one of the electric carts, and he had some pop, and I thought, oh, that'd be hard to like bend over and put that in if he's hurting. And I walked past him. And I was like, oh, geez, that was a prompting. So I turned around, but by then he had already done it. We've got to be looking for these. We've got to be ready to just act instantly. Because my brain was like, wait, are you sure that was a prompting? And it was too late by then. But just remember, that voice, especially when it's a prompting, because you'll have the sense of impulse to do it, it's going to sound different than your voice. The one that you have in your head all day that blah, blah, blah just talks to yourself, that's not the way the spirit comes. It's like I mentioned, that background channel, like having a TV on in the other room, you can hear it. It's not the one front and center where you're talking to yourself. It's just going to be that flow of ideas and thoughts. And the thing about it, when you're receiving those ideas and thoughts, they're going to feel right. And that's subtle, usually very subtle. It's just going to feel like truth. Now, when I met my wife, I had a very different experience. After we'd gone on a couple dates and we'd talked marriage way quickly, I was going to pray about whether she was the right one, whether we should get married or not. So that morning I woke up when I was like planning to go to church and then pray afterwards, when I could sit in my lazy boy recliner and really still my mind and tune my heart and open the nice default state to get that message. From the moment I woke up, I felt like my entire chest was a barrel of warm butterbeer. That was what it felt like. That's the best I can describe it. I was just full of warmth, like my whole torso, and I'd never had that particular experience before. Had burning here and a column of like peace there, but whole torso. And so I prayed and I'm like, okay, is she the right one? I'm waiting and like nothing's changing because I'd already got my answer. And you may notice this when it comes to big important things, or heck, I don't know, maybe even smaller things. You might get the answer before you recognize it. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But that was the same experience I had as I prayed about the Book of Mormon for the first time. I was already feeling it was true in my heart. It's kind of like it was there. Like, oh yeah, it's true. But I kneeled down. I'm like, is it true? And I'm waiting for this change. And there was nothing. No change at all. Because I'd already received the answer. So remember, when you get revelation, especially if it's some answer you've really been seeking for, it's just going to feel right. It's going to be a thought, not unlike the other thoughts in your head. Idea, concept, paired with a feeling, and it'll just kind of be like, that seems right. And it's not necessarily going to stand out. It's just going to be like a little bit backlit with that feeling of like, this seems like the right thing to do. I want you to remember, you're ready now. You're not just ready to receive revelation now, you are getting revelation now. And you have been your whole life, whether you know it or not. You don't need any special merit badge. There's nothing you need to do to qualify. You're ready. It's just a matter of listening to what's already there and starting to receive it. starting to trust it. It's a struggle to trust, though. We've been given the opposition of our natural bodies to struggle against. And it's supposed to be this way. We're supposed to learn from this. The spirit trusts and receives. It knows the voice of its maker. And the body doubts. It's the brain's job to doubt everything and keep us alive. We have a negative bias in our brain that looks for how things can go wrong. We're wired that way. Why? Because it keeps us safe. Because if you're constantly looking for what could go wrong, you might be able to avoid it and thereby stay alive and pass your genes on to the next generation. Our ancestors were cautious people. That's why we're here today. So you've got the body there to be in opposition to your spirit. And as I said, it's supposed to be that way. Because your goal, your job, is to make the spirit stronger. Your job is to trust the spirit over the flesh. That's the test of faith. Your brain is going to look at what's in front of you, it's going to use your senses, and it's going to tell you, we're in trouble. These are the facts. And it's up to you to listen to the spirit. And if the spirit says, hey, you're actually okay, you stick with that. You follow that first. In order to have revelation, you got to trust you first. So I want you to stop right now. Stop saying that you don't get revelation. Stop saying that you're not good at this, that you can't hear his voice. Every time you do, you weaken yourself. You weaken your spirit. Start saying the opposite. Start saying, I am great at getting revelation. I hear the voice of my Father. And you'll notice you're going to start to do better with that. So just know, if you're saying a prayer, if you're asking for something and you're waiting, you're going to get that answer. Your spirit's going to go, cool. And your brain's going to go, oh no, was that really God? First the spirit receives, then the brain doubts. So be ready for that. And remember, it's going to come as a thought, kind of like any other thought. It may be a packet of insight and understanding, but it will feel right. It'll kind of just be slightly different from the others. And learning to tell the difference between what's your thoughts and what's the spirit, it will take some practice, and there's just no way around that. I'm sorry, there's just no way around that. You're going to have to practice. But it'll go faster than you think if you really apply yourself to it. Now, do you know why everybody's so good at complaining about not being able to get answers to prayers? It's because it's a safe problem. It's a problem we choose because it keeps us safe. What does that mean? I did this for many years. You see, if I admit that I get answers to prayers, I'm also admitting I can hear the voice of God. And if I can hear the voice of God, then that implies that I hear him tell me to do something and that I'm responsible to do that thing. That's scary. All of us as humans, we're terrified of responsibility. And so most of the time, we live in denial. If you can deny, if you have plausible deniability, if you can say, I just don't hear the voice of God, you're safe. Now you don't have to do what he says. Now you don't have to follow through on those promptings. So be aware of that and try to catch that in yourself and just be honest with yourself that you're scared. It's okay. It's all right to be afraid. It's all right to be scared of getting a prompting to do something, even if it is helping that guy with his groceries. Like, he doesn't know who I am. Would that look weird? What would he think of me? It's okay to be scared. It's okay to doubt. Just be honest with yourself, though. Be honest that, I usually know what I'm supposed to do. I just don't want to admit it. If you've really struggled with revelation, check there first. I didn't really start getting good at revelation until I admitted that I could hear him. I had to admit, I was just afraid of hearing, because then I would be on the hook for whatever he told me to do. So do you see how your comfort zone and getting revelation don't really overlap? As long as you're trying to stay in your comfort zone and not do anything, you're going to have to either ignore revelation or pretend like you don't hear it. But that is stagnation. It's horrible. Living in your comfort zone means you're not growing. Everything just kind of gets stale and you feel like, I know I should be doing something or doing more with my life, but I don't know what to do. You really don't want to be stuck there too long. It's not a fun place to be. I just wanted to be a gospel hermit. Wanted to live on an island all by myself, and just be able to read books all day. I wanted to be able to ask him, like, how do stars form? I wanted to get huge downloads of information and see visions, all from the comfort of my chair, where I never have to move, where I never have to grow, where I never have to interact with any other humans. Just wanted to be this mystic sage that knew everything. That's not how it works. God's not here to teach you facts about whatever you're interested in. He's here to help you grow. Now you can get to the point where he's going to tell you everything. He wants to reveal those mysteries to you, but he will not unless you're growing. That is so important to remember. And it's important to remember as far as avoiding deception, because if you think like you're getting all these incredible mysteries of how things are working, but you're not really growing as a person, you're not becoming more converted, if you are living in constant sin, those revelations might be coming from a different source. So please check yourself on that and start getting good at recognizing your fear, at calling it out, and then doing the opposite. Nobody wants to leave the comfort zone. I get it. I hate it. Like my comfort zone, it's safe, it's secure, but it's not satisfying in the end. So you're in good company. I mean, Moses didn't want to go back to Egypt. God's like, hey, you're going to go deliver my people. And he's like, I don't talk good. God's like, it's okay, I'll send Aaron. He's like, but I don't know what to do. He's like, it's okay, I'll tell you. Nobody wants to. But when you start that quest, when you step out in faith, you start to get the blessings. And then that's so exciting because you're like, holy cow, look at me. I'm on this journey. I'm learning things. I'm being taught from on high, being guided step by step. And I'm going somewhere. I'm going somewhere good on my way to my own promised land. That's so much cooler than the comfort zone. And truly, there is a stability and a security that you will receive that you can't get in your comfort zone. Comfort zone is in fear territory. And as you leave that and step into faith territory, that is where the real security comes. That's when you start to develop unshakable faith in God, and you can face anything, and you're not afraid to face anything anymore. It feels really good. I am still full of fear, but I've left a lot of it behind me. And as I get closer to the light, the fear is getting less and less. Maybe the best guide I can give you for hearing the voice of the Spirit was taught to me by John Pontius in his book, Following the Light of Christ into His Presence. The thing that stands out from that entire book to me is that the Holy Ghost starts with the light of Christ. Your conscience, following your gut instinct, your internal sense of right and wrong, that is a gift to you from God to let you know what's true and what's false, where you need to be going and where you should stay away from. So in order to get good at revelation, to be receiving large revelations, you've got to start with the small stuff. You've got to start with the foundation. Because if you're not willing to just follow that tiny voice of conscience inside, you're not going to get anything bigger. And there's some things in your life right now that you've been trying to ignore. You've been living in some contradiction, right? Knowing that you really shouldn't do that one thing, or you really should do that other thing, or call that person, bury the hatchet, let go of that grudge. That's the voice of the Spirit to you, coming in your conscience. That's where it starts. So look at what doesn't seem right in your life. Look for what you don't want to face. Look for what you're afraid to face. That is the starting point. If you take care of that stuff, start cleaning up what the Spirit's telling you to do, following that little Jiminy Cricket voice, then you start to get better stuff. But you're not going to move on. He's not going to give you anything better until you honor what you're getting now. And it's not going to be anything huge necessarily. It's just like a little prompting, like do this, call this person, forgive this person, write this letter. It's usually going to be tiny. He can speak to us through thoughts, through visuals, through feelings, through impulses. And I think it starts on that level of impulse with the conscience. One of the reasons we don't follow that voice, one of the reasons we don't ask questions, is because we're afraid of getting deceived. We don't want to follow something that isn't Him. We want to know for sure that it's God guiding us and not just ourselves. That's a wall you have to get over. At each stage, there's this boundary line. There's the wall. And in order to climb it, you have to do some stuff differently. So let me give you the two most important things you can do to get over that wall. Whether you're like, I'm not sure, or I think I am. Start writing down what you get. I cannot tell you how important that is. These books here are full of revelations I've received. And I mark them, I highlight them, I put a little dot next to them so I can go back through and read them. And when I've got revelations stretching back for 7 years, let me tell you, that builds some confidence, because I can go back with my natural man brain and pick those apart and be like, well, is this really the voice of God, or are you just making this up? All I can tell you is if I'm making that up, I am really smart, because those have guided me consistently to greater light. They have taught me. They've helped me to grow into a better person. They've destroyed my fear and given me a stronger connection to God. So if they're not Him, I don't know where they're from. But I'm going to choose to trust, because they brought me nothing but good fruit. Christ told us that's how we can tell if something is good or bad. What is the fruit it bears? Not what do the leaves look like on the tree, not the immediate appearance, but what are they producing over the course of time? Good fruit or bitter fruit? That is a great key to figuring out if what you're getting is true or not. So writing things down. Now, if you're in this first stage of like, I don't even know if I hear Him, you're going to want to mostly focus on that light of Christ, following the voice of your conscience, just noticing, what is He telling you not to do? What do you already know? It's not like, I'm going to wait and see what He tells me. You already know. You've been receiving this whole time. You know there's stuff in your life that isn't right. Now, don't get excessive here and beat yourself up, but just go to, what is that voice telling you? The voice that urges you to do, hey, you can do better. Hey, that's not the best choice for you. Follow that voice. You start to get into the mid-zone then. And then you start receiving more, and your confidence grows. Now, the other tool, besides writing down what you receive, is declarations. Let me give you an example of what that looks like. This is my set of declarations from a couple months ago. I still my mind, tune my heart, and speak to Him with the expectation that He is here, listening to me, making eye contact. I take time every day of the week to connect with Father. I ask what He would have me do, and I do it with joy. I seek, expect, and receive gifts, revelations, and miracles. I hear His voice with ease and clarity and instantly obey. I have a close personal friendship with my Father in heaven. I'm not afraid of being prompted to do something because I know it will make me happier. As you speak these words of truth about how you can hear, about how you're receiving now, about how you have a good relationship with God, you start to see what's already there. You have to say it sometimes in order to believe it. And you can't see it until you believe. This is the process of faith. Remember, it's believe first, then see. The natural man is see first, then believe. You try to use that mode with spiritual things, you're going to be frustrated your whole life. So in order to believe it, you may need to say it. I've used those things for years, like in the morning when I'm doing my devotional, like, I am great at receiving revelation. And let me tell you, it's increased my ability to receive revelation. So those two tools, saying declarations before you pray, helping to tune in your heart, helping to still your mind, they help to get you right into that state. Declarations are so powerful because what you're trying to do, when we're talking about stilling your mind, I know we went over a lot in those videos. It's this big process of like calming your brain down. But if you're just doing that in your own head, it can be kind of messy. You're like, what's going on in here? But if you're using words to get a hold of your mind's attention, be like, hey, we are still, we are calm, we are clear. My thoughts melt away and there is silence and peace. That helps. So you talk about your heart being tuned in, about feeling still and calm, about feeling that peace burn within you. You help to turn it on. You're basically commanding your mind. So definitely use declarations before you pray. You can steal mine or you can write your own. And then when you receive something, or when you think you receive something, write it down. Hey, I kind of feel like I need to do this. Just do it. Act in faith. And then you get to have your learning experience. You get to see whether it was Him or not. And if your conscience is telling you to do something, it's Him. Remember, your conscience, your heart. I'm not talking about your brain. I'm not talking about the part of you that has that internalized voice of authority, like a parent or a religious leader, someone telling you, you're bad, you need to do better, you're not good enough. That's not your conscience. That's your mean old superego. So don't pay attention to that voice. So if you're worried about deception, the way you're going to avoid it is by being in your default state. And this kind of brings us to step number 4 on our quick connection list. Abide in Him. Now, what does that mean to abide in Him? I think that's a scripture that is definitely worth pondering over yourself. But for me, to abide in Him is to sit quietly, feeling in my heart what it's like to have the Spirit with me, being quiet in my mind, having that sense of psychological contact, like I'm sitting in the same room with Him. We're just sitting quietly looking at each other. When I'm in prayer and I'm feeling His presence and psychologically trying to be in His presence, I feel this sense of connection and closeness. And as we just sit and abide, we are right in the zone where we need to be. We're in the zone of where revelation shows up. Abiding in Him is so important. If you are going to try to seek revelation, but you don't necessarily get to that state yet, you're going to struggle. So, you're going to be talking to Him, you're going to be listening, and you don't have to expect that He's going to always respond to everything you say, or that there will be revelation every time you pray, because there won't be necessarily, unless you count just feeling His Spirit, feeling His presence and His peace, just kind of sending the message of like, I love you. But what you're going to be doing is sometimes in between talking, you're just going to sit for a while. Just sit there. You're just going to be paying attention to Him. So you've tuned in, you're talking, you're pausing, you're watching, you're listening. Sometimes you're just sitting there. This is what it means to abide. Well, let me end with a quote from Richard G. Scott that may help you to feel a little bit better. It may help you to trust that you're already hearing. And this honestly confirms something that Heavenly Father told me. He said that it's unlikely you're ever going to do the wrong thing if you're following your instincts. Richard G. Scott said, "Most often, what we have chosen to do is right. He will confirm the correctness of our choices His way. That confirmation generally comes through packets of help found along the way. We discover them by being spiritually sensitive. They're like notes from a loving Father as evidence of His approval. If, in trust, we begin something which is not right, He will let us know before we have gone too far. We sense that help by recognizing troubled or uneasy feelings. So just move forward with faith. Know that you're already hearing. Accept that. Go through the steps, get in your default state, and accept that what you receive first in quietness, that has the feeling in your heart as well as like the rightness in your mind, is probably His voice. Write it down, act on it, then come back and revisit it. Write about how it went. Write about how you feel. Use your declarations before you pray to get yourself ready to hear, so you can start trusting more, so you can jump over those walls and get into the next phase. Because every time you pass a wall, there's more light. It's better. It's more satisfaction, more fulfillment, and it is so worth it.